I never thought my private boat lift would turn into a full-scale war with the Pelican Bay Marina Homeowners Association. But when Karen O'Malley threatened to fine me $10,000 for improving my own property, I decided it was time she learned exactly who controlled access to her precious marina. My name is Andrew Gallagher, and I bought my waterfront property in Pelican Bay, Florida, 3 years ago specifically, because it came with deeded water rights and a private channel that connected to the main marina. The house sat on a prime piece of land at the northern edge of the bay, and the previous owner had grandfather rights dating back to 1952, long before the marina and its HOA even existed. When I purchased the property, those rights transferred to me, including full ownership of the 100-foot channel that ran from my dock to where it merged with the marina's main waterway. That channel was on my deed, clear as day. It was mine. I worked as a marine engineer, spending most of my career designing dock systems and waterway infrastructure. So when I decided to install a professional-grade boat lift for my 32-foot contender fishing boat, I knew exactly what I was doing. I had the permits from Monroe County, approval from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and even a courtesy letter from the Army Corps of Engineers confirming my project met all federal waterway regulations. Everything was legal, proper, and completely within my rights as a property owner. The boat lift itself was a beautiful piece of engineering. I had it custom built by a company out of Tampa, with 4 posts sunk deep into the channel bottom, hydraulic lifts that could raise my boat completely out of the water, and LED lighting for night operations. The installation took 2 weeks, and I made sure every bolt met marine-grade standards. When it was finished, my contender sat gleaming above the waterline, protected from barnacles and the occasional curious manatee that wandered through. I was admiring my handiwork on a Saturday morning, coffee in hand, when I heard the sharp clack of heels on my dock. I turned to see a woman in her late 40s marching toward me with a clipboard clutched against her chest like a shield. She wore white capri pants, a coral-colored blouse, and oversized sunglasses that she pushed up onto her heavily highlighted blonde hair as she approached. "Are you Andrew Gallagher?" she demanded before she even reached me. "That's me," I said, setting down my coffee. "Can I help you?" "I'm Karen O'Malley, president of the Pelican Bay Marina HOA," she announced as if I should have recognized her on sight. "And we need to discuss this unauthorized structure you've erected in our waterway." I felt my jaw tighten. "My waterway, actually. This channel is on my property deed." She made a dismissive sound and flipped through papers on her clipboard. "The HOA has jurisdiction over all waterways connected to the Pelican Bay Marina system. Your boat lift is in violation of our architectural guidelines, Section 12, Subsection 4, which requires all dock modifications to receive prior approval from the Architectural Review Committee." "I don't need your approval," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm not a member of your HOA. My property isn't part of your community." Karen's expression hardened. "Your channel connects to our marina. That makes it subject to our rules. You have 14 days to remove this structure, or you'll face a fine of $500 per day until compliance is achieved." I laughed. I actually laughed, which only made her face turn a deeper shade of red. "Madam, with all due respect, you have no authority here. My water rights predate your HOA by 40 years. I have every legal permit I need. You can take your fines, and we'll see what our lawyer has to say about that," she interrupted, her voice rising. "And don't call me madam. This is a serious matter, Mr. Gallagher. The HOA board met last night specifically to discuss your violation. We have rules for a reason. Standards. If we let everyone just do whatever they want, this whole community would fall apart. Again, I'm not part of your community, I said. My house is not in your development. I don't pay your dues. I'm not subject to your rules. She pulled a document from her clipboard and thrust it toward me. This is your official notice of violation. 14 days, Mr. Gallagher. Remove the lift or face the consequences. I took the paper but didn't look at it. The only consequence is going to be you wasting your money on lawyers who'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. I'm within my rights. Karen adjusted her sunglasses and turned on her heel. We'll see about that, she called over her shoulder as she stalked back down my dock. I watched her go, then looked down at the notice. It was printed on official HOA letterhead and cited at least a dozen different covenant violations. The language was threatening and official sounding, but it was also completely baseless. I had done my homework before installing the lift. I knew my property rights better than anyone. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew HOAs could be relentless, even when they were wrong. I called my real estate attorney, Marcus Chen, that same afternoon. Andrew, hey, Marcus answered on the second ring. What's up? I explained the situation, reading him the violation notice word for word. There was a long pause after I finished. They really don't have a leg to stand on, Marcus finally said. Your water rights are ironclad. I reviewed them personally during your purchase. The channel is yours, full stop. The HOA can complain all they want, but they can't enforce their covenants on property that isn't part of their association. That's what I thought, I said, but she seemed pretty confident. HOA boards get overconfident all the time, Marcus said. They're used to homeowners rolling over because fighting is expensive and exhausting. But you're not actually in their HOA, which means they're just blowing smoke. Do you want me to send them a letter explaining the legal reality? Yeah, that'd be good, I said. Professional but clear. I'll draft something Monday and send it certified mail, Marcus promised. In the meantime, don't remove the lift, don't acknowledge any authority they claim to have, and keep documentation of every interaction. Will do. Thanks, Marcus. No problem. This should blow over once they realize they can't bully you. That Monday, I went back to work at my office in Key Largo, putting in long hours on a new dock project for a resort in the Bahamas. The HOA nonsense slipped to the back of my mind. Marcus sent his letter that Tuesday, and I figured that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Thursday evening, I arrived home to find a bright orange sticker plastered across my boat lift control panel. It read, "Unauthorized structure cease use immediately," in bold letters, with the HOA logo printed at the bottom. My blood pressure spiked. I peeled off the sticker and noticed another one stuck to my dock post, and another on the hull of my boat. Someone had come onto my private property and vandalized my equipment. I pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency number for the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. A deputy arrived 40 minutes later, a young guy named Rodriguez who looked fresh out of the academy. I showed him the stickers and explained the situation. He took photos and wrote up a report for trespassing and vandalism. Have you had any other issues with this HOA? He asked. They sent me a violation notice last Saturday, I said. My attorney responded on my behalf, explaining that I'm not subject to their authority. And they came onto your property without permission. Absolutely without permission. I have security cameras, I added, gesturing to the discrete units I'd installed after moving in. I'll pull the footage tonight. Please send that to us, Deputy Rodriguez said, handing me a card with a case number. If they come back, call us immediately. Don't engage with them yourself. I won't, I promised, though I was already planning my next conversation with Marcus. The security footage showed Karen O'Malley herself. accompanied by two other women I didn't recognize, walking onto my dock at 2 in the afternoon while I was at work. They spent 10 minutes sticking their orange labels on everything, with Karen pointing and gesturing while one of the other women took photographs. The footage was crystal clear, showing their faces and Karen's distinctive HOA branded polo shirt. I sent the video to both Deputy Rodriguez and Marcus. Marcus called me within an hour. "This is harassment," he said flatly, "and criminal trespassing. I'm going to draft a cease and desist letter and also recommend you consider a restraining order if they continue." "I just want them to leave me alone," I said. "I'm not trying to cause problems. I just want to use my own property." "You're not causing problems. They are. Let me handle this legally. In the meantime, post no trespassing signs on your dock, very clearly visible. That strengthens any future trespassing claims." I ordered the signs that night and installed them the next morning before work. Big, professional metal signs that read, "Private property, no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted." The following week was quiet. Too quiet. I started to think maybe the cease and desist letter had worked, that Karen and her HOA board had finally accepted they couldn't push me around. Then I got the lawsuit papers. They were delivered by a process server on a Wednesday afternoon. The Pelican Bay Marina HOA was suing me for $25,000 in damages, claiming my boat lift constituted a dangerous obstruction to navigable waters and created undue hardship for Marina residents. They were also seeking an injunction to force me to remove the lift immediately. I sat at my kitchen table reading through the complaint, my initial anger giving way to something colder. They had actually done it. They had actually filed a frivolous lawsuit because I wouldn't bend to their made-up authority. I called Marcus. "They sued me." "I saw," Marcus said. "The papers were filed yesterday. Andrew, I'm going to be straight with you. This is going to cost them a lot of money and waste everyone's time, but you're going to win. Your water rights are documented and clear. They have no case. How long will this take?" "Could be months before it's dismissed. Maybe a year if they really drag it out, but you'll win, and we can probably recover your legal fees since this is so clearly without merit." "I'm tired of this, Marcus. I just want to fish and enjoy my property." "I know, but sometimes you have to fight. And the good news is, you're holding all the cards here." That weekend, I decided to take my boat out to clear my head. I lowered the lift, started up the contender's twin engines, and eased out of my slip. As I navigated through my private channel toward the open marina, I noticed something I'd overlooked before, something that had been in the back of my mind but never really crystallized until that moment. My channel wasn't just a connection to the marina. It was the only deep water connection to the marina. Pelican Bay Marina was situated in a shallow back bay area, surrounded by mangroves and sandbars. The developers had dredged the main marina basin decades ago, but there were only two ways in or out by boat. The southern route was a narrow, winding channel that was barely passable at low tide and required local knowledge to navigate without running aground. But the northern route, my channel, was deep, straight, and accessible at any tide. It was the primary route everyone used. Because the previous owner of my property, a man named Gerald Hoffman, had the foresight to dredge it deep enough for serious boats back in the 50s, and had maintained it ever since. When I bought the property, those maintenance rights and responsibilities transferred to me. The channel was mine to maintain, mine to use, and legally, mine to close. I didn't do anything with that information right away. I just filed it in my mind as I headed out into the Atlantic for some much-needed time on the water. The kingfish were running, and I managed to land 3 nice ones before heading back in the late afternoon. As I motored back through the marina, I saw Karen standing on the community dock with her clipboard, talking to a couple in their 60s who were washing down a sailboat. She looked up as I passed, and even from 50 feet away, I could see her expression sour. She said something to the couple, pointing at my boat, and they both turned to look. I just waved and kept going, navigating back to my channel and my dock. I cleaned my catch, stored the fillets in my freezer, and tried to enjoy my evening. But the lawsuit papers sitting on my kitchen counter kept nagging at me. The next Monday, I had to give a deposition. Marcus had warned me it was coming, but it was still surreal to sit in a conference room at the HOA's lawyer's office and answer questions about my boat lift for 3 hours. The HOA's attorney was a guy in his 30s named Brandon Hartley, all expensive suit and fake charm. He asked me detailed questions about the installation, my permits, my understanding of maritime law, and whether I believed my structure impeded navigation. "It doesn't impede anything," I said for probably the 10th time. "The channel is 30 feet wide. My boat lift takes up maybe 12 feet at its widest point, leaving 18 feet of clear passage. That's more than enough for any recreational vessel." "But wouldn't you agree that some boat operators might find it intimidating to navigate past your structure?" Brandon asked. "No more intimidating than navigating past any other dock in the marina," I said. "And again, it's my channel. If someone doesn't want to use it, they can take the southern route." "The southern route is difficult to navigate," Brandon said. "That's not my problem." Marcus put a hand on my arm. "My client has answered that question. Move on." The deposition continued in that vein for another hour before finally wrapping up. As we walked to our cars, Marcus shook his head. "They have nothing," he said. "That was a fishing expedition. They're hoping you'll say something they can twist, but you did great. Stick to the facts, which are all in your favor." "When do we actually get to court?" I asked. "Probably not for 6 months. We'll file a motion to dismiss first, which might end this whole thing in a few weeks. But be prepared for them to fight every step." I drove back to Pelican Bay feeling frustrated and tired. This was exactly what Karen wanted, to drag me through an exhausting legal process until I gave up. But I wasn't going to give up. I was right, legally and morally, and I'd see this through. That evening, I decided to do some research. I pulled up the county property records and started tracing the history of my channel. What I found was fascinating. Gerald Hoffman had purchased the property in 1952, when it was just raw waterfront land. He dredged the channel himself, filed all the proper paperwork with the county, and established his water rights through decades of maintenance and use. In 1987, when the Marina development was proposed, Gerald had actually been approached by the developers to sell his channel to them. He'd refused. Instead, he'd signed an informal agreement allowing Marina residents to use his channel for access to the bay, but he'd retained full ownership and control. That agreement was never recorded as an easement. It was just a handshake deal, a gentleman's agreement that Gerald honored out of neighborliness. When I bought the property, that informal agreement wasn't part of the deed because it had no legal weight. Gerald had simply allowed people to use his channel out of courtesy. The Marina residents had been using my channel for almost 40 years, assuming it was a public waterway or part of the Marina system. But it wasn't. It was private property, and I had every right to restrict access. I sat back in my chair, thinking. If I closed my channel, every single boat in the marina would be stuck using the treacherous southern route, or they wouldn't be able to leave at all during low tide periods. The marina held 68 boats according to the community website. That was 68 families who would suddenly find their boats trapped or severely limited. It seemed extreme. Nuclear even. But Karen O'Malley had made this nuclear when she filed a baseless lawsuit against me. She wanted to play hardball. Fine. I could play hardball too. I called Marcus the next morning. Can they claim an easement by prescription on my channel, since people have been using it for so long? There was a pause. In Florida, you'd need 20 years of continuous, open, and notorious use without permission of the owner. But Gerald Hoffman gave permission, which interrupts the prescription period, and you've only owned it for 3 years. Why do you ask? Just wondering what my options are, I said. Legally speaking, could I restrict access to my channel? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Andrew, technically, yes. It's your property. But that would be extremely disruptive to the entire Marina community. Are you seriously considering that? They sued me for 25 grand for installing a legal boat lift on my own property, I said. They trespassed on my land, vandalized my equipment, and are trying to force me to destroy something I paid $15,000 to install. So yeah, I'm considering my options. If you close the channel, expect the lawsuit to get even uglier, Marcus warned. They'll claim you're acting in bad faith, retaliating, creating a nuisance. Can they win on those claims? No, Marcus admitted. You have the legal right to control access to your property. You're under no obligation to provide access to boats trying to reach the marina. But expect serious backlash. I'm already getting backlash for doing nothing wrong. At least this way they'll understand they can't push me around. Think about it carefully, Marcus said. This is a big escalation. I will, I promised. I spent the next week thinking about almost nothing else. Part of me knew it was petty, that closing the channel would hurt innocent people who had nothing to do with Karen's crusade. But another part of me was tired of being treated like a criminal for exercising my legal rights. The HOA board had made a choice to sue me rather than simply leave me alone. Actions had consequences. The decision crystallized when I received notice that the HOA board had voted to place a lien on my property for unpaid fines, totaling $7,000. Never mind that I had never been legitimately fined. Never mind that they had no authority over my property. They were now claiming I owed them money and attempting to encumber my deed. That was it. That was the line. I called a marine construction company out of Marathon and got a quote for installing a gate across my channel. They could do it for $8,000. Installing 2 substantial posts on either side of the channel near where it met the main marina, with a locking gate that could swing open when I needed to use it. The whole system would take a week to install, and it was completely legal as long as I wasn't blocking any legitimate easements, which I wasn't. I authorized the work to begin the following Monday. The construction crew arrived early. 2 guys in a barge with pile-driving equipment. The sound echoed across the water as they drove the first post deep into the channel bottom. By mid-morning, half the marina had gathered on the community dock to watch. I was sitting on my deck with coffee, watching the work progress, when I saw Karen O'Malley practically running down the dock toward my property. She was trailed by 3 other people, all of them looking agitated. I walked down to meet them at my property line, which I'd marked with a chain between 2 posts. "What do you think you're doing?" Karen demanded, her face flushed. "Installing a gate on my private channel," I said calmly. "Do you need something? You can't block the marina access." "It's my channel. I can do what I want with it." One of the men with her, a heavy-set guy in his 50s with a deep tan, stepped forward. "This is insane. You're going to trap 60 boats in the marina." "There's another way out," I said. "The southern channel. That's barely navigable." The man sputtered. "My boat draws 4 feet. I can only use that channel during high tide, and even then it's dangerous." "That sounds like a problem for the HOA board to solve," I said. Maybe they should have thought about that before suing me and placing an illegal lien on my property. Karen's expression shifted from anger to something calculating. You remove this gate and we'll drop the lawsuit. I almost laughed. No deal. You don't get to sue me, harass me, trespass on my property, and then offer to stop when I fight back. The gate stays. The lawsuit can proceed. And when I win, I'll be seeking damages and legal fees. You're being unreasonable, one of the women said, a thin blonde in tennis clothes. I'm being unreasonable. I installed a legal boat lift with proper permits on my own property. Your HOA president trespassed on my land, stuck stickers all over my equipment, sued me for $25,000, and tried to lien my property for fake fines. But I'm the unreasonable one. The group looked at each other, clearly not expecting me to have an answer to that. The gate will be finished by Friday, I continued. After that, if you want to use my channel, you'll need my permission, which I won't be granting to anyone who's party to this lawsuit or has harassed me in any way. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. I turned and walked back up to my house, ignoring Karen's calls behind me. My hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but I felt good, empowered. I was done being pushed around. The construction crew finished the gate installation by Thursday afternoon. It was a substantial piece of work. 2 marine-grade aluminum posts set 10 feet apart, with a heavy gate that swung on industrial hinges and locked with a commercial padlock. When the gate was closed, there was no way a boat was getting through. The crew also installed a manual winch system so I could open and close it from my dock without having to swim out. I paid them their $8,000, tipped them another $500 for finishing early, and locked the gate for the first time. The effect was immediate. By Friday morning, I had angry voicemails from at least a dozen Marina residents. One message was from a man named Roger Feldman, who claimed he had a fishing charter booked for Saturday and couldn't get his boat out. Another was from a woman who had a medical emergency and somehow blamed my gate for making her stress worse. But the most interesting call was from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a professional-sounding man identified himself as Paul Kensworth, the Commodore of the Pelican Bay Boat Club. Mr. Gallagher, I understand there's been some conflict between you and the HOA board, he said carefully. That's putting it mildly, I replied. I want you to know that not everyone in the marina supports the board's actions. In fact, many of us think Karen O'Malley has overstepped significantly. We're just ordinary boat owners trying to enjoy the water. We didn't ask for any of this. I appreciate that, Mr. Kensworth, but the fact remains that your HOA sued me and tried to lien my property. That gate stays closed until this situation is resolved. What would resolution look like to you? He asked. Because right now, you've effectively shut down the entire marina. People can't get to work. Charter captains can't run their businesses. Some folks keep their boats here but live full-time aboard and need access to services. Then maybe those people should talk to their HOA board about dropping the lawsuit, removing the fraudulent lien, issuing a public apology, and leaving me the hell alone. There was a long pause. I'll see what I can do, Paul finally said, but I can't promise anything. Karen's pretty dug in. So am I said, and ended the call. That Saturday morning, I woke to the sound of someone banging on my front door. I grabbed my phone to check the time, 6:30 in the morning, and pulled on shorts before heading downstairs. Through the window, I could see Roger Feldman, the charter captain who'd left me a voicemail. He was red-faced and furious. I opened the door but kept the screen door latched. "Can I help you? You're costing me $2,000 today," Roger said, his voice tight. "I have 6 clients flying in from Ohio for a fishing charter. They've paid deposits. They've booked hotels, and I can't get my boat out of the marina because of your goddamn gate. Take the Southern Channel, I suggested. Are you kidding? That channel's a nightmare, and it's dead low tide right now. I'd rip the bottom out of my boat trying to navigate it. You're deliberately sabotaging people's livelihoods. No, your HOA board is sabotaging people's livelihoods by wasting time and money on a frivolous lawsuit instead of serving their community. Take it up with them. They're trying to uphold the community's standards, Roger shouted. They're trying to bully someone who isn't even part of their community, I corrected. And I'm done being bullied. Now get off my property before I call the sheriff. Roger jabbed a finger at me. You're going to regret this. Everyone in this marina is going to know what kind of person you are. A person who stands up for his legal rights. I'm fine with that reputation. He turned and stormed off, and I watched him go before closing the door. My heart was pounding. I didn't like costing someone money or disrupting their business, but Roger was blaming the wrong person. I hadn't asked for any of this. By Sunday afternoon, the local news had picked up the story. A reporter from the Florida Keys keynoter called me, asking for a statement about the waterway dispute in Pelican Bay. I declined to comment and referred them to Marcus. An hour later, a camera crew showed up at the marina, and I watched from my window as they interviewed Karen O'Malley on the community dock. She played the victim beautifully, talking about how an unreasonable property owner was holding the entire community hostage over a personal grudge. The story aired Monday evening. Watching it was surreal. Karen came across as concerned and reasonable, talking about community values and safety standards. They showed footage of my gate, making it look like a prison barricade. Then they interviewed Roger Feldman, who talked about his canceled charter and lost income. But they also interviewed Paul Kensworth, who provided a more balanced perspective. There's been an ongoing legal dispute between the property owner and the HOA board, he explained carefully. Mr. Gallagher has legal water rights that predate the marina by decades. He's within his rights to control access to his private channel, even if the timing is unfortunate. The reporter also mentioned that the HOA had filed suit against me first, which provided some context. But overall, the story made me look like the bad guy, which was probably Karen's intention. Marcus called me after the broadcast. Well, you're famous now. Not the kind of fame I wanted, I said. The good news is this might actually help our case. The lawsuit is a matter of public record, and now people know the HOA started this. It makes their claims of you acting in bad faith weaker. You're just defending your property rights. So what happens now? We wait for the judge to rule on our motion to dismiss. I filed it last week. Should hear back in the next month or so. In the meantime, keep that gate closed and document any harassment. Oh, there's been plenty of harassment, I said, thinking of the nasty notes I'd found on my door and the glares I got whenever I left my house. The next week was tense. I continued going to work, coming home, living my life. But the atmosphere around the marina was hostile. People I'd never met before gave me dirty looks. Someone keyed my truck while it was parked in my driveway. The sheriff's department took a report but said without video evidence, there wasn't much they could do. Then on Thursday, I got a call from Marcus that changed everything. Andrew, I just got off the phone with Brandon Hartley, the HOA's attorney. They want to settle. I sat up straighter. Settle how? They'll drop the lawsuit, remove the lien, issue a written apology, and acknowledge your water rights are valid. In exchange, you remove the gate and allow Marina residents to continue using your channel. And what guarantees do I have that they won't just come after me again in 6 months? The settlement would include a permanent easement agreement, recorded with the county granting Marina residents access through your channel. But it would also include language explicitly stating you're not part of the HOA, not subject to their covenants, and retaining full rights to maintain and use your property as you see fit, including your boat lift. I thought about it. What about damages? My legal fees? The cost of the gate? They're offering $15,000 to cover your costs, plus their formal acknowledgement that they acted improperly. $15,000 would more than cover Marcus's fees so far and the gate installation, with a little left over. And the permanent easement would actually be good for my property value. Future buyers would know exactly what the situation was. What about Karen O'Malley? I asked. Does she face any consequences? That's internal to the HOA. But reading between the lines, I think there's been a board revolt. Paul Kensworth and several other members have apparently been pushing hard for settlement. Karen's been outvoted. I felt a smile spreading across my face. So the community finally stood up to her. Seems that way. So what do you think? Accept the settlement? I wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to drag this out, make them suffer, prove my point completely. But the rational part of my brain knew that settling was the smart play. I'd get compensation, a written apology, permanent protection for my property rights, and I could remove the gate that was honestly a hassle to deal with every time I wanted to take my boat out. Accept it, I said, but I want the apology to be specific. They need to acknowledge they had no authority over my property, that the lawsuit was without merit, and that they trespassed and harassed me. I'll negotiate the language, Marcus promised, but I think we can make that happen. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. I met with Marcus, Brandon Hartley, and 3 HOA board members: Paul Kensworth, a woman named Linda Torres, and a younger guy named Jeff Morrison. Karen O'Malley was notably absent. We signed all the documents at Brandon's office in Key Largo. The settlement agreement was 12 pages long and included everything Marcus had promised. The HOA dropped all claims, removed the lien, and paid me $15,000. The easement was drawn up to protect both my property rights and Marina residents' access. And the apology letter, which would be posted on the HOA's community website and mailed to all residents, was beautifully specific about how wrong they'd been. After signing, Paul Kensworth approached me. Mr. Gallagher, on behalf of the reasonable members of this community, I apologize for how you were treated. Karen O'Malley no longer speaks for this HOA. She's out, I asked, resigned under pressure. Linda Torres confirmed. Once people understood the full story and realized she'd embroiled us in an unwinnable lawsuit out of pure ego, the board called for her removal. She quit before we could vote her out. Who's the new president? Paul is, Jeff Morrison said. And our first order of business was settling this mess and making things right. I shook Paul's hand. I appreciate that. I never wanted to fight with the whole community. I just wanted to be left alone to use my own property. Understood. And for what it's worth, your boat lift is beautiful. Professional work. I smiled. Thanks. I do marine engineering for a living, so I take this stuff seriously. We wrapped up the meeting, and I drove back to Pelican Bay feeling lighter than I had in months. When I got home, I called the marine construction company and scheduled them to remove the gate the following week. I didn't need it anymore, and honestly, it would be nice to not deal with opening and closing it every time I wanted to go fishing. That weekend, I was cleaning my boat when I heard footsteps on the dock. I looked up to see an older man in his 70s, wearing faded shorts and a fishing shirt. He had a weathered face and kind eyes. "Andrew Gallagher?" he asked. "That's me." "I'm Gerald Hoffman," he said, extending his hand. "I used to own your property." I was stunned. I shook his hand, feeling like I was meeting a legend. "Mr. Hoffman, it's an honor. Your property, your channel, it's incredible." Gerald smiled. "I heard about your troubles with the HOA, wanted to come by and say well done. I dealt with Karen O'Malley myself a few times before I sold. She tried to tell me I couldn't paint my dock without HOA approval. I told her where she could stick her approval form." I laughed. "I wish I'd met you before all this started. Would have saved me some stress." "You did fine," Gerald said. "Better than fine. You stood up for your rights and you didn't back down. That channel, those water rights, I fought hard to establish them back in the 50s. The county didn't want to recognize private channels back then. But I knew that property would be valuable someday, and I wanted to protect it. I'm glad it ended up with someone who appreciates it and won't be pushed around." "I appreciate it more than you know," I said, "and I promise to maintain it the way you did." "I can see that," Gerald said, gesturing to my boat lift. "That's quality work. You know what you're doing." We talked for another hour, Gerald sharing stories about the early days of Pelican Bay before the Marina existed, when it was just him and a few other fishing families. He'd watched the area develop from wilderness to the upscale community it was today. He'd sold his property to me because his wife had passed away, and the memories were too much. But he still lived in Key Largo and came down to fish sometimes. "If you ever want to go out on the water, let me know," I offered. "I'd be honored to have you as crew." "I might take you up on that," Gerald said with a grin. "Been a while since I caught a proper kingfish." After Gerald left, I sat on my dock watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. For the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. The lawsuit was over, the settlement was signed, Karen O'Malley was gone, and I had my property rights protected in writing. The gate came down the following Tuesday. The construction crew made quick work of it, removing the posts and patching the holes in the channel bottom with cement. By afternoon, the channel was open again, looking exactly like it had before any of this started. That evening, I took my boat out for a sunset cruise. As I motored through the channel into the main marina, several people waved at me from their boats. Roger Feldman, the charter captain, gave me a thumbs up. A couple washing their sailboat called out, "Welcome back." It felt good. Like things were returning to normal, or maybe better than normal, since now everyone understood the boundaries and my rights were officially recognized. I headed out into the bay, opened up the throttles, and let the contender's engines roar. The wind whipped through my hair, the salt spray felt cool on my skin, and the stress of the past months melted away. This was why I'd bought the property. This was what it was all about. When I returned to the marina at dusk, I saw Paul Kensworth on his sailboat, a beautiful 40-foot cruiser named Second Wind. He waved me over. "Andrew, got a minute?" I maneuvered alongside his boat. "What's up?" "Wanted to invite you to the monthly Marina cookout this Saturday. We do it every first Saturday, burgers and beer on the community dock. Would be good for people to get to know you properly, not as the guy they were fighting with." I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that. What should I bring?" "Just yourself. And maybe some fish if you get lucky before then. We've got the rest covered." "Will do." Saturday arrived with perfect weather, sunny and breezy with temperatures in the low 80s. I spent the morning fishing and managed to catch 3 nice mahi-mahi, which I cleaned and brought to the cookout that afternoon. The community dock was crowded with people, at least 40 residents mingling around several grills. Paul saw me arrive and waved me over, introducing me to what felt like half the marina. People were friendly, apologizing for the hostility during the gate situation, explaining they hadn't understood the full story. A woman named Susan Martinez, who lived on a trawler with her husband, approached me with a beer. I wanted to apologize personally. I left you a nasty voicemail during the gate thing, and I was completely out of line. Karen told us you were just being spiteful, trying to hurt the community. We didn't know she'd sued you first or that you weren't even part of the HOA. It's okay, I said, accepting the beer. Emotions were high, I understand. No, it's not okay, Susan insisted. We should have gotten the full story before judging you. And Karen should never have been allowed to file that lawsuit without consulting the whole community. Lesson learned. The Mahi Mahi was a hit. Paul grilled it perfectly, and people kept coming back for seconds. As the afternoon wore on and the beer flowed, the atmosphere became genuinely friendly. I found myself laughing and swapping fishing stories with people I'd considered enemies just weeks before. Roger Feldman approached me around sunset, carrying 2 fresh beers. "Peace offering," he said, handing me one. "We're good," I assured him. "No, we're not until I apologize properly. I came to your house at dawn, screamed at you, blamed you for problems you didn't cause. That was wrong. I was angry and scared about losing money, but I took it out on the wrong person. Karen O'Malley cost me that charter, not you. She cost everyone here money and stress with her ego trip." "Apology accepted," I said, clinking my beer against his. "How's the charter business going now?" "Booked solid through spring," Roger said with a grin. "Including a makeup trip for those Ohio guys on the house. They were surprisingly understanding once I explained what happened. Said they'd been dealing with an insane HOA board in their own neighborhood and completely sympathized." We both laughed at that. HOA horror stories seemed to be universal. As the cookout wound down and people started heading back to their boats, Paul pulled me aside. "This was good. Really good. You're part of this community now, Andrew, even if you're not technically in the HOA, which honestly might be better. You get all the benefits, none of the drama." "As long as I can keep my boat lift," I said with a smile. "That lift isn't going anywhere. It's actually one of the nicest installations in the Marina. Few people have been asking who did your work, looking to get similar setups. I can give out the contractor's information," I offered. "They did excellent work." I walked back to my house that night feeling genuinely happy. The whole nightmare situation had resolved itself in the best possible way. My property rights were protected. Karen O'Malley was gone. I had $15,000 to cover my costs, and I'd somehow ended up with a community full of new friends. The following weeks settled into a comfortable rhythm. I went to work, went fishing, attended the occasional Marina social event. The HOA's official apology was posted on their website and mailed to all residents, and while it must have been humiliating for Karen, I never heard from her again. Rumor had it she'd moved out of Pelican Bay entirely, buying a condo in Key West where she couldn't terrorize any more neighbors. 2 months after the settlement, I ran into Marcus Chen at a waterfront restaurant in Key Largo. He was having dinner with his wife, and I was picking up takeout after a long day on the water. "Andrew, how's life treating you?" Marcus asked, standing to shake my hand. "Can't complain. The Marina situation worked out perfectly." "Best possible outcome," Marcus agreed. "And I heard the property owner prevailed in another HOA case. I was researching for precedent. Your case might actually help other people fighting similar battles. The settlement agreement we negotiated has been cited in at least 2 other disputes I know of." "Really? Really?" Clear documentation of water rights predating HOA authority, combined with your successful defense, it's creating precedent in the Keys. You might have struck a blow for property rights across the whole region. That made me smile. Good. Maybe it'll make HOA boards think twice before bullying people. "We can hope," Marcus said. "Enjoy your fish and give me a call if you ever need anything else. though hopefully we're done with legal drama for a while. Definitely done, I agreed. 6 months after the settlement, on a perfect October morning, I was preparing my boat for a fishing trip when I saw an unfamiliar car pull into the marina parking lot. A young couple got out, mid-30s, looking around with the excited expressions of people seeing a place for the first time. They walked down to the community dock, clearly admiring the boats and the water views. I was about to go back to my preparations when they approached my dock. "Excuse me," the man called. "Are you Andrew Gallagher?" "I am," I said, wondering what this was about. "I'm David Preston. This is my wife, Emily. We're thinking about buying a house in Pelican Bay, and the real estate agent mentioned your name. Said you'd had some issues with the HOA, but it got resolved favorably." I climbed off my boat and walked over to meet them properly. "That's one way to put it. What did you want to know? Is this community a good place to live?" Emily asked. "We've been burned by nightmare HOAs before. We're nervous about getting into another bad situation." I considered my answer carefully. The HOA here had leadership problems. But those problems got resolved. The new board is reasonable, focused on actual community needs rather than power trips. And honestly, most of the people here are great. It's a good boating community if you love being on the water. "And the legal issues," David pressed. "We heard something about a lawsuit. The previous HOA president sued me over a boat lift I installed on my private property. She lost, resigned, and the current board settled fairly. My property rights were protected and everyone moved on. It was ugly while it lasted, but it worked out." Emily and David exchanged glances, having one of those silent married couple conversations. Finally, Emily nodded. "Thank you for being honest," she said. "That actually makes us feel better. At least we know the current board learned their lesson." "They definitely did," I assured them. "If you do buy here, you'll be fine. Just make sure you understand your property rights and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself if necessary." "Words to live by," David said with a grin. "Thanks for your time." I watched them walk back toward their car, then return to my boat. It occurred to me that my fight with Karen O'Malley might actually have improved the community long term. The HOA board was more accountable now, more careful about respecting property rights. Residents were more engaged, paying attention to board decisions rather than letting someone like Karen run wild. Sometimes standing up to bullies didn't just help you. It helped everyone. I finished prepping the boat, started the engines, and backed out of my slip. The morning was gorgeous, the water calm, and the kingfish were calling. I motored through my channel, legally recognized and protected, and headed out into the Atlantic. Life was good. My boat lift gleamed in the morning sun. My property rights were secured. And I had a whole community of friends who'd learned that you can't push around someone who knows their rights and refuses to back down. Karen O'Malley had threatened me over a boat lift, and I'd responded by closing the channel and trapping all their boats in the marina. It had been nuclear, it had been dramatic, and it had been completely legal. More importantly, it had worked. The HOA had backed down, settled fairly, and reformed their leadership. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And sometimes the only way to deal with an unreasonable bully is to show them you have more leverage than they ever imagined. As I cleared the channel and opened up the throttles, I thought about Gerald Hoffman and the water rights he'd fought to establish 70 years ago. He'd had the foresight to protect something valuable, and I'd benefited from his wisdom. Maybe someday, decades from now, whoever owned my property would appreciate that I'd stood up for those same rights, keeping them intact for the next generation. That's what property rights were about, really. Not just personal benefit, but preserving rights and freedoms for everyone who came after. Karen O'Malley had tried to erode those rights with her petty tyranny, but she'd failed. The rights remained stronger than ever, legally documented and protected. I spent the day fishing, catching and releasing, enjoying the solitude of the ocean. When I finally headed back in the late afternoon, I was sunburned and tired but deeply satisfied. As I motored back through the marina, several people waved. Paul Kentsworth called out from his sailboat, asking how the fishing had been. Roger Feldman gave me a friendly salute as he cleaned his charter boat after a day with clients. This was community. Not an HOA board dictating rules and threatening fines, but people who respected each other's property and rights, who helped each other when needed, who enjoyed the shared blessing of living on the water in one of the most beautiful places in America. I docked my boat, activated the lift, and watched as my contender rose smoothly out of the water. The hydraulics hummed efficiently, the LED lights gleamed, and everything worked perfectly. $15,000 well spent, and it would serve me for decades to come. Walking back up to my house, I saw the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Another perfect day in paradise. Another victory for common sense and property rights. Karen O'Malley was gone, the HOA was reformed, and I was free to enjoy my property in peace. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply winning, completely and legally, in a way that improves things for everyone. The gate had come down, the boats were free, and the community was stronger for having gone through the fire and emerged on the other side with better leadership and clearer understanding. I cracked open a beer, sat on my deck, and watched the sun sink below the horizon. Life in Pelican Bay was exactly what I dreamed it would be when I bought this property 3 years ago. It had just taken a fight to get here, but that was okay. Some things worth having are worth fighting for. And my boat lift, standing proud and functional in the golden evening light, was definitely worth fighting for.